All right, you guys ready for this? Should we do it? We're going to do it. Even if you don't like the music, I like the music. There it is. You know what it is? We got to stretch. Get that blood flowing. We got big stuff to talk about today. And I'm moderately rested too, so this should be good. No fancy drink today though, just water. All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Mark Kweppett Speaks. I am your self-mastery coach, Mark Kweppett, and I'm here to help you step beyond your limits and unleash your apex potential. And today we've got a pretty cool topic. It's kind of weird. I feel like I should be more hyped for this because it's in some ways like one of the bigger breakthroughs I've had in terms of my content and my system as a whole. And I guess I am really pumped for it. It's just one of these things where it's like, I never know how people are going to respond to it. I never know what's going to click with people beforehand. I know what's like exciting to me and interesting to me. And this is one that is very exciting and interesting to me. So you guys know that I'm more or less a megalomaniac who has tried to go inside to figure out how can we unleash our power? How can we really be the person that we want to be? And one of the things that we run into in this process is wayward desires, basically desires that point us towards something that we don't actually want, things like cravings, addictions, and that kind of stuff, because that's really what gets in the way, right? Because we have these good desires, these goals, these visions for our life, but then we have feelings that make us want to sit on the couch and just play video games and jerk off all day long, or avoid our responsibilities or avoid taking action on our bigger goals, right? And today what we're going to be talking about is how to shift those desires. So those desires that would keep you playing small and held back in your life, what do you do with them? How do you process them, right? And we started talking about this previously about the difference between devotion and discipline. And this goes very much in the line of the devotion side. Basically, I made the case that discipline sucks, devotion is way better. And you can go watch that podcast if you want to get the lowdown on that. But today what I'm going to be doing is taking that a step further and looking more at those internal mechanics, those buttons that we can press inside of ourselves so that we can continuously come from this place of devotion, this place of authenticity, this place of expression. And what I'm going to be teaching you is what I'm calling the FLAIR method. All right. And this is basically the new updated version of my previous internal technique, what I was calling the CUT method, centered urge transmutation. That's the acronym CUT, and which has been at the heart of a lot of my work with helping guys with everything, like from quitting porn to leveling up in life and all that kind of stuff. So this is like the next evolution, and it's called FLAIR. And basically it will show you how to take any bit of resistance inside of you, any wayward desire, and turn it into this fiery ball of passion that you can use to drive you in the directions that you want to go. So hopefully that sounds interesting to you. And so let's start breaking this down. But, well, before we break it down, I guess I should do a plug. If you guys are watching my videos, but you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Also, if you want to make sure if you want to be able to talk with me about this stuff more and you want to get more in-depth teachings around these kinds of things, well, then make sure you check out the Vanguard below. It's still under the Universal Man. It'll be switched over to the Mark Kweppett name here shortly, but you can sign up for that. I do weekly calls. I've got a bunch of workshops. I've got a bunch of guides. I've got all kinds of stuff in there to really help you take all of this content further and really implement it in your life. So with that out of the way, let's get into this thing. So for those of you who have been following along this whole Mark Kweppett Speak series, the big idea emerging out of it is this idea of protagonism. Okay, and that is opposed to the idea of antagonism, right? So the way I'm defining protagonism is that it's a lifestyle of expressiveness, authentic expression, okay? Where you're coming from a belief that you are good, that you've got good inside of you, and that your goal is to just let it out of you in the most natural and real way possible, okay? And this is the polar opposite of the antagonistic side, which says, I'm not good inherently. I've got to earn all my goodness. I've got this black hole of lack inside of me that I got to fill up with status. And the antagonistic side is focused on trying to get something. It's trying to possess something, okay? And so it's really this dichotomy between coming from a place of abundance versus a place of lack, coming from a place of expression versus trying to possess something. Okay, so let's take this a little bit further. Like, what really happens when you walk this antagonistic path? Well, this is the path I think most people walk most of the time. It's kind of what we're trained to do because it's in a lot of ways more obvious and intuitive, and it's the path of discipline. You have to suppress these wayward desires, all this kind of stuff. But the big problem, the big one that really locks everything else down, is that when you're coming from this antagonistic place, you have kind of two main headspaces that you can be in. You can be in the state of winning or in the state of losing, okay? When you're winning, basically you perceive that you are moving toward that object you want, toward that hot hookup, or that, all that money, or that new house, or that social status. It's basically like, I want this thing. And if you feel like you're moving toward it, or you feel like you've attained it, well, then you feel like you've won, and your brain releases all these pleasurable neurochemicals, and you feel good about yourself and all this kind of stuff. That's not the bad part of the antagonistic system, other than the fact that you can then think you're better than other people, and then that can turn pretty ugly. But so that's one of the states. The other one, obviously, is the losing state. And this is when you feel like you're not getting that thing that you want. Because remember, from this perspective, it's all about getting a specific thing. And when you feel like you're not, or you feel like it's moving further away, well, then that creates a very uncomfortable sensation in your system. You get what I call the black hole, okay? You feel this lack, this longing inside of you, this feeling of, I don't have what I need to be okay, or I don't have what I want, and it hurts. It's uncomfortable. And that alone sucks. But things get worse when we run from that feeling, because that's what we want to do. We don't want to feel those things. And this leads to us trying to repress the part of ourselves that is feeling that kind of stuff. And this is at the root of most of our more severe dysfunctions. So, for example, I would say pretty much anyone who has developed an addiction and really can't get out of it, other than, lacking the practical knowledge of how to do so, I would say the biggest thing that keeps people from getting out of really destructive patterns is that that destructive pattern is somehow letting them hide from that feeling of the black hole. So, for example, if someone just feels like really down on themselves, they just got this big black hole in their heart, well, then they can just turn to some kind of drug or some kind of escapist behavior, and then they can avoid feeling that thing, right? They find some garbage, some stimulating garbage to throw in that black hole to cover it up, to keep them from having to experience it. And all kinds of stuff can come from this sort of pattern, everything from neediness to anger to depression to addiction, all that kind of stuff. So, and that's a rough way to live, right? People who are walking this antagonistic path, they have to base their entire life around figuring out how to win. Otherwise, they're stuck living as a loser and hating themselves and dealing with this massive black hole. Problem is, you're never going to be able to be on top all the time. You're never going to be able to win all the time. You're just you're going to be constantly oscillating between this feeling of winning and losing and winning and losing and winning and losing. And there's never any stability to be found. It's just your next high is just setting you up to want that high again, and then you're back into that lack. And so where we want to be, right? We want to be on the other side of it. We want to be in the protagonistic path. And what this is about when you're living from here is there is no black hole, because instead of trying to get something, you're just trying to be someone. When you're trying to get something, well, then you're going to have to engage in a battle of scarcity. Not everybody can get everything, right? And so some people are going to have to lose, and you're going to have to lose, probably a lot. But when you're just focused on expressing something, the thing is inside of you, and there's an infinite supply, and you can get it anytime you want. It's just authenticity. How do I bring it out? And when that's how you orient your life, well, then you can feel good anytime you're being authentic, right? That's the goal. The goal is a state of being rather than a state of getting. And you can think of this, someone mentioned this before. It's similar to the idea of systems versus goals, Scott Adams, I don't know if he was the first to name this dichotomy, this mentality, but he's popularized it in his books. Like, you want to focus on the system rather than the goal. It's like, you don't want to be thinking about, I need to lose X amount of weight. I need to focus on my system for losing the weight, where it's like I follow this diet and this exercise or whatever. And then, every time I follow the system, I get to feel good, because that is the goal, is the state of being. This is really, really powerful, right? Now, it can be as simple as just reframing this. All right, and that's essentially the FLAIR methodology here. FLAIR is an acronym that stands for frame, lack as radiant expression. All right, and it's pretty simple. It's just like, all right, you're taking something, instead of focusing on trying to get something, you just focus on, well, how do I want to be? How do I want to express myself in this moment? What's the most authentic way I can show up in this moment? And then you shift into that. Right? And that's what you focus on. All right. And so this can be very simple. Like for me, when I'm creating content, all right, I create content. It's one of the biggest things I do. I sit down and I think. And when I'm in a winning versus losing mentality, what happens is, if I feel like I'm making progress toward completing that piece of content, I feel great. I feel like I'm winning. But if anyone knows anything about the creative process is that it's basically a long process of like losing repeatedly until eventually, you get a big win, or until you really kind of put it all together, right? And so what I found is that in the past, like I just could only work for so long because I would just constantly feel like the ideas weren't good enough, and I would feel like I was losing and losing and losing. And it just fills you up with stress and tension and dissatisfaction. And so I shift to this radiant expression sort of idea, okay? It's like, well, who do I want to be? What do I think is interesting? What do I think is true? All right? And the big power shift that happens between expression or possession versus expression is that when you are in the expressive state, all right, the two states that you can be in there, it's like in the possessive or in the antagonistic possessive state, you can be in winning versus losing. Where you want to be is in anticipation versus embodiment, okay? Because that's what happens when you shift into the protagonistic frame, is that you're either being the person that you want to be in that moment, which feels awesome, or you're in a state of anticipation of being that person. And sometimes the anticipation is as much or even more satisfying than the true becoming. It's nice to look forward to things. And so when I'm creating content, like when I become aware of this, I'm feeling stressed out, feeling like, I'm not getting where I want to go. I'm not going to get this done in time, blah, 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 blah. I just got to shift. I got to think, all right, well, what if I just focused on being authentic here? What's interesting to me? What do I like here? What if I believe that I'm going to get somewhere good? What happens? Well, then all of a sudden I start anticipating. I start actually going on a journey. I start actually enjoying the process that I'm in, because it's just, I know something's unfolding. I know something's happening. I'm in a story. I'm in an adventure. I'm in a quest in, the omni game of life. And so that's what you want to do. You want to find the thing that you want, name that desire, and then go on an adventure of expressing that desire. Okay, so it's the difference between me saying like, I want to get this video done. That's me trying to possess some outcome. And instead, it's shifting into, I want to create something interesting. I want to create something compelling. And it's a state of doing then, a state of being. It's a system of operation that I've refined through, years of doing creative work. I know how to do it, and I just play that game, and I play it all out. And boom, there's a big shift. All of a sudden, I'm this grasping black hole trying to, get this end result versus, now it's flowing out of me. It's like I have this light that's radiating out of me, right? It's almost like you're popping your heart out. And it's not always this simple. Okay, that's a super simple example that, you could, but a lot of things are like this in life where you can kind of just reframe it pretty quick. It gets more complicated because it's not always that easy, but we'll come back to that. What I want to do first is paint the picture here of what happens when you start recognizing that this is one of the fundamental mechanics in the game of life. It's think about it like this, all right? You have two big states of awareness you can be in. You can be out doing stuff in the world, making stuff happen, engaging with life, and on the external level, or you could be going internal. This is what I consider the spiritual plane. You take your intellect and you take your instincts and you kind of look inward. You smash them together and be like, what's going on inside of me? You can think of it as looking at your heart. I was talking in the last video about the head, heart, gut triad. Basically, you take all of them, 1, 2, 3, and you bring them all focused right in here. And this is the same thing as stepping into your emotions in a lot of ways. I consider this a spiritual plane. It's like a sphere of your conscious experience on the internal level. All right. And what you're doing is you're scanning for these little black holes. You want to scan for any little hooks inside of you that where maybe a part of you has moved into a state of possession, a state of trying to possess something, a state of grasping, a state of projecting your happiness on some finite external thing. Okay. And all you're doing is you're finding and monitoring those and then popping them out. It's there's this imagine you have I have this cone of energy or this ball of energy around me. All right. And then a black hole is like a bite taken out of that sphere of energy around me. You can think it's it's just like a bite taken out of it. It's this chunk missing. It's this dark spot. Okay. And what you want to do is you come back into that expressive mentality, and then you just pop it back out. It's like imagining the world will keep taking these bites out of you. It will keep throwing you into states of longing and lack. And your job is to keep regenerating those holes, keep moving back into a state constantly of how do I want to express myself in this circumstance? Instead of focusing on what I don't have, let's focus on who I want to be. And if you keep doing that, well, then you kind of become energetically invincible, more or less. But the trick here is that it's not always so simple to pop that field back out, to pop your heart back into that radiant state of expression. So what happens if things are not that simple? What's going on there? Well, in order to move from this possessive to expressive state, basically you just got to find the desire and then shift your perspective so that you're more in this mode of operation, right? Well, what if the desire is not something you actually want to act upon? So for example, all right, imagine a guy who's married, is walking down the street and then he sees an attractive woman walk by, all right? Maybe he experiences some lust. Lust would be this black hole state of wanting to possess her sexually in some form or another. He feels like he needs her. All of a sudden, he has this lack and longing inside of her, and he feels, my wife doesn't look like that, or I wish I was with her, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's a black hole that is just formed in his spiritual energy field, if you want to sound woo-woo about it. And he tries to reframe it, but he's like, well, how do I reframe that? How do I view that as expressive? I don't actually want to be with her. I want to be satisfied and happy with my wife, but I don't know what to do with this desire here. How do I actually invert it? How do I actually pop it back out? Because he can't anticipate that. He can't work. He can't be like, I can't wait for the day until I get to sleep with a girl like her, because then what is he doing? He's imagining cheating on his wife or waiting for her to die or something like that. And both of those hopefully do not agree with the rest of his moral system and what he authentically really wants. So it's these kinds of situations where people really get stuck, right? They don't know how to navigate it when they seem to want something that they don't actually want. They don't know how to remove those kinds of black holes. And so here's where the flare method gets a little bit more nuanced. All right. And to understand how this works, we got to introduce two more concepts. This idea of spiritual centering versus surfacing. Centering is a process of abstracting a desire, de-specifying it. Basically, you're going deeper into the desire and finding the more fundamental layers and desires that comprise that more surface one. All right. And so it's like you're going deeper with it. You're going like, imagining this field of energy around you. You're pulling the focus in closer toward the center of your being. And the opposite, we need to know how to do the opposite too. We need to know how to take, something that's very core and central and expand it back out, make it more specific, specifying the desire. And when you can learn how to travel a thought process, a narrative, inward and outward, that's where we start gaining the power that we need to handle these trickier black holes. Okay, so let's do an example here. Let's actually stick with the example of a guy experiencing lust. Okay, so normally with the flare methodology, what you're going to do, it's going to be similar to the cut method. You can go look at my cut method videos that I've done previously, or my video on mastering your neurochemical workflow. It's all kind of the same stuff. All right, it's like you get triggered, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to have to stop yourself. And you're going to expose the black hole. You're going to find the black hole inside of yourself. Now, in the flare method, it gets more specific, is that once you find that black hole, what you want to do is you want to name the desire that's there. Okay? And once you name it and you accept it and you embrace it, this gives you, like if it's a simple black hole, well, just a lot of times naming the desire and embracing and accepting that it is real will solve it. The problem is when you name the desire and you don't actually want the desire. So in this case, he names the desire. He's like, oh, I want to have sex with that woman. And he's like, well, I don't actually want to, but this part of me really does. And so what do you do then? Well, here's where you got to go deeper. And so we can separate this kind of sphere of spiritual engagement, whatever we want to call it, these layers of desires into a few different categories. So at the very edge, the edge of it's like the surface desire, and this is pretty much about some kind of stimulation that you're looking for, and it's tied to some specific action. So that desire of, I want to sleep with her, that's a very surface desire, because what does he want? He wants, you can get the sexual pleasure of it, right? Sure. Okay. That's there on the surface, but we can't work with that because, we're not going for that. That's not authentic, whatever. And so we got to go a step deeper. And there's several layers deeper that you can go. The next layer in would be what I would describe as the status mid layer. Okay. And so you ask yourself to get there, you say, well, why do I want, or why do I want that surface level of having sex with this woman? Why does that produce pleasure? Well, the status layer pretty much explains that. It's because by having sex with her, your brain views it as some kind of status affirmation or status expression. And status is a biological mechanism for flourishing inside of us. Like when we believe that our status is increasing, our brain produces pleasure. And that's why our brain produces pleasure when we reproduce, because that's our, evolutionary status. Our evolutionary fitness is increasing. So when he's getting the sexual acknowledgement of some woman, that's going to make him feel a kind of sexual status. It could also make him feel a relational sort of status, like feeling like someone really, maybe what he really wants is intimacy. He wants to be seen. He wants to be validated. He wants to be valued by someone. He wants to have that connection of being loved and cared for by someone who he views as having high status. Okay? So on that level, he looks at that and it's like, oh, wow, all right. Now, let's say he wants to take it a layer deeper. So the way he does that is he asks, well, why does this status produce pleasure? Huh? Why does it produce pleasure? What about these sorts of things really clicks with me? And I guess if you're rational materialist, evolution's as deep as you go, well, then that's as deep as you can go. But if you're going to, if you have any sort of spiritual leaning, you believe that there's anything more to this life, that there's at least more to human beings than just raw mechanical stuff like that, well, then you realize that there's the layer beneath status is identity. Because basically, like, what we want is to be someone. We want to be someone special. We want to be someone valuable. We want to be someone who is a force of good in the world, who's getting good things. And so him, like the guy with lust, he's viewing that woman as someone who would make him into that guy, to be someone. He wants to be someone that he wants. And if he could hook up with her, well, then that would mean that he is that guy, that he is someone special, that he is someone valuable, that he is someone sexy, that he's someone who is good. He would have to be. Otherwise, why would she sleep with him, right? And so that's the identity layer. And then we can even take it down one more layer if we want, like the central layer. Like we're going deeper and deeper and deeper. We've got the stimulatory level, we've got the status level, we've got the identity level, and then the deepest point is what I call the essential point, where we get down into the essence of our being. Like if you completely abstract your desires out, it's like you are a being like meant for heaven. Like we have this burning desire for perfection inside of us. I would say this is the divine spark imprinted in the hearts of everyone. All right. This is the most central thing. And you can experience this if you want. Like if you want to do the internal work, you can do this. It's like you can practice bringing your desires back in a meditative state until eventually you're just able to sit in your burning ball of desire for heaven. It's like, that's what you are. You are a heat-seeking missile for perfect pleasure. That's what you are. And that's, what I believe we're all meant for. Ultimately, I'm a Christian. I believe that's what we're meant for. We're meant to actually become totally one with God. But when you completely abstract out all the specifics, you can learn how to keep the mind open and clear. You call it the cloud of the unknowing. And the Christian tradition, that's what it is. It's like you stop specifying because you realize, wow, there's goodness beyond my comprehension. And if I allow myself to want that, what happens? Well, you kind of just become this flame in this void, which is ironic because that's how the Wheel of Time author, what's his name? Robert Jordan? I don't know if I'm getting his name right. I think that's his name. Yeah, that's how he describes the magic system. It's like you want to tap into your magic. You have to tap into the flame in the void. And what I see that as is tapping into that fundamental, innate, most essential part of your being, which is that spark and drive for goodness and perfection. So it's like that's the deepest you can go. And for your deepest problems, you probably got to go all the way in there, but not for all of them. All right. And surfacing, so that's centering, bringing your thoughts in, tracing a desire deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, you got to be able to go the other way too. You got to be able to take your desires and go back out. This is someone like, say you got some abstract desire of like, I want a better life. It's like, well, that's good. Okay, that's just too vague. We got to specify it. We got to get more concrete. It's like, well, what are the ways we can make it better? What are the ways in which you can, go about making that happen? How are you going to implement it in your life? What's the specific thing you're going to do very next on your to-do list, right? Like that's surfacing. So how does this all work when you've got a black hole? So, all right, guy experiences lust. He sees that black hole inside of himself. He accepts the desire that some part of him wants to hook up with this woman, but he can't keep it like that because that's not authentic. That's not really authentic. So what he has to do is take a step deeper. He's got to trace it inward. All right. And so let's say he only needs to take it one layer down and he looks at it on the status layer. He's like, I don't really want to sleep with this woman. What I really want is to feel like sexually validated. What I really want is to have a sense of intimate connection with someone. And it's like, so then it's just a matter of like, well, what's another way I can get that? What's a way in which I can express that desire that is authentic rather than fantasizing about this woman, watching porn, or just like sitting here crying about the fact that, I'm not with her. It's like, oh, well, all of a sudden there's a lot of different options. It's like, okay, well, maybe I need to reconnect with my wife. Maybe I need to, maybe it's not even about sex. Maybe it's like I need to work harder in my career and raise my status, because really what I want to do is feel good about who I am and who I'm being. Maybe what I need to do is like spend some more time with other people, my friends and family. Maybe it's not even an issue about sex or relationships. Maybe I'm just like feeling like crap right now. Maybe what I'm realizing is I just want to feel good. Like my physical status is crap because my diet's crap, my sleep is crap. Like, I don't exercise and I just feel bad in my body. And so when I look at her, I get this little buzz that makes me forget about how crappy I feel. And well, if I just want to feel better, there's other ways I can do that. If I want connection, there's other ways that I can do that. If I want intimacy, there's other ways that I can do that. If I want sexual validation, there are other ways that I can do it. And there are ways that I can do it that are authentic. And I can engage in a process. I can create a system that allows me to enter into a authentic mode of being and expression. And then I can just focus all my energy in that. And I can then I'm just in a mode of anticipation. I'm just looking forward to getting to where I want to go. That's right? That's it. And that's what it is. So it's like when you are practicing this flare method, what you're trying to do is just find that mode of being that honors the core desire at play. Like anytime that you fall into a dysfunctional state of lack, you can think of it as some idol. Some idol has stolen a piece of your essence. It's saying like, hey, you have to do X, Y, Z if you want to feel your fulfillment. And your job then is to dive into yourself and figure out, well, what is the desire, that deep, true desire that got hijacked here? What's another way I can get it? How can I express it? And sometimes the general aim will stay the same. Sometimes so for example, like I'm trying to make more money right now. And I can go at it from a possessive state where it's like, oh, I can't feel good until I get the money. I better get that money. If I don't get that money and I feel like I'm moving away from it, well, I'm going to feel like I'm losing. I'm going to get all filled with stress and cortisol and, feel like shit. And then get discouraged and probably not work nearly as well. I'm going to have to force myself through all that resistance. And that's where I need to be very disciplined. And I need to repress these feelings. I need to beat them down and become harder and tougher. And it's like, okay, sure, you can walk that route. People get stuff done that way, but it's draining and it sucks, okay? And so the other way is like, all right, yes, I want more money, but that's a secondary thing. What I really want is to behave like a man who generates wealth. I want to be someone who generates tremendous value for myself, for my team, for my family, and for all the people that I serve, right? That's my goal. That's my system. And so I ask myself, well, what do I got to do to be that generative force, right? That's the identity piece. Like that's me taking it down to the identity level of being like, what kind of guy do I want to be? I want to be someone who generates massive fucking value, all right? And I just have to then surface that desire. So what does that look like? Well, what status do I need to pursue? What status, what hierarchy do I need to level up in? Maybe it's in my public speaking. Maybe it's in my marketing. Maybe it's in my, actual product. All right. All these things are basically status games where you're trying to raise something, but you're doing it from the place of expression, right? It's like, what comes first? Where are you moving from? And so what the game then becomes is just like, it's just a game. It's an energy game. That's all it is. It's an energy game of, are you making sure that you are staying radiant so that you can be the hero of your life? Or are you falling into vacuous states? Are you falling into these states of just, dysfunctional lack and longing and scarcity and all this kind of shit where you just feel bad, right? And what's worse is that when you're in this state of possessiveness, you basically can become possessed because the puppet masters, the people who have won enough or accumulated enough power, like they're going to try and take advantage of you. And that's the way the world works, is that if you operate in the vacuous plane, you operate on the antagonistic side of the omni game, well then there's someone who's going to be your master, because there's going to be people who have what you want, and they are going to dangle that in front of you and use it to manipulate you. And that's what we see today. That's what a lot of marketing and advertising is. That's what a lot of businesses, that's what a lot of politics is that they see the black holes in people and they dangle stuff in front of them and say, hey, you want this thing? Come over here and serve me. And people do. And it's very dark, manipulative, and screwed up, and it does not respect the dignity and individuality of people, and it makes them less human. It makes them less who they are. And so we want to break out of that. Okay, we want to break out of that. We want to be, all of us, respecting the dignity in other people, willing the good for everyone, aiming always for win-wins, where we can all win together. We can all level up together. And so, yeah, hopefully this was interesting to you. That's pretty much all I wanted to hit on today. And I got a bunch more ideas and content around this, but I wanted to make sure I got this one out and was able to kind of articulate it, because I feel like it's very important. The people who I've been working with individually around this kind of stuff, teaching them about it, it's a real game changer. And I'm gonna be honest, like, I don't know, like, there's a lot of my old material I might have to like just throw out, because it just makes so much stuff easier. Like, when you're moving from this devotional framework where you are focusing on being the person that you want to be and inverting these desires so that they're constantly radiant, it's just pretty easy. It just starts becoming fun. It's just like, it's a game. It's just like, how real can you be? How you can you be? And then watching all the crazy, awesome stuff that happens as a result of you being you. So, like I said, if you like this, please like and subscribe. Please hit that notification bell. Check out the Vanguard if you want to interact with me more around these concepts. And I'll see you guys all later. Ooh, yeah.